Can Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy really cut trillions of dollars from the federal budget through President-elect Trump's newly formed Department of Government Efficiency? Let's get into it. In this video, I'm going to talk about this department, and we're going to talk about what the federal government spends money on and how these potential cuts will impact you. And I'm warning you now, this is going to be a journey. So if you don't have time to watch this deep dive video right now, favorite it and come back to it when you have a few minutes. First, this department is not really a government department like the Department of Defense or the Department of Agriculture. It's more like an advisory commission. Real government departments must be created by Congress. They can't just be randomly created by the president. But on the flip side, because it's just an advisory commission and not a real government department, it doesn't need congressional approval and will operate outside the standard regulations of the federal government. This means Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy do not need to be confirmed by the Senate like other heads of government departments. And most importantly, they don't need to divest from their personal businesses. Now, this becomes especially important when you realize that Elon Musk has received about $15 billion in payments through U.S. government contracts over the last decade between his two companies, Tesla and SpaceX. On top of that, some of the agencies that Musk is talking about gutting currently oversee his companies. Now, that's a whole separate conversation for a whole separate video, and if you want me to do a deeper dive on that topic, I absolutely can. Just let me know in the comments. But back to this Department of Government Efficiency. President-elect Trump has said he wants the work of this advisory commission to be completed by July of 2026. So what are they going to be doing between now and then? And what kind of power will they actually have? Well, when it comes to power, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will not have the power to just cut federal spending on their own. Not one singular person in our government has that power. But based on what we know so far, what they will have the power to do is to identify what they consider to be wasteful spending and provide guidance to the White House, to Congress, and to the Office of Management and Budget about where the federal government should be cutting spending. Then it will be up to the President, Congress, and OMB to actually follow through. Now, in case you don't know, the Office of Management and Budget is a powerful department responsible for assembling the president's proposed budget so that it can be sent to Congress, among many other things. And the guy Trump appointed to be the head of OMB is Russell Vought. Now, not only was Vought Trump's OMB director during his first term, but Vought is also a co-author of Project 2025. And in fact, he wrote an entire chapter on cutting the federal budget through the OMB office. Now, I'm not saying that Trump is going to enact Project 2025 through OMB, but the facts are this. Vought wrote the OMB chapter in Project 2025, and now Trump has nominated him to actually head up OMB again. It's an important piece of this puzzle. But again, let's put this whole OMB stuff to the side for now. Right now, let's focus on what's on the chopping block for Musk and Ramaswamy. Now, according to an op-ed written by both of them, they believe the bureaucracy of the federal government represents an existential threat to our republic, and they see this Department of Government Efficiency as a vehicle to cut down that bureaucracy and take a more entrepreneurial approach to the way the federal government operates. So Musk and Ramaswamy want to eliminate the power of federal agencies to create rules and regulations, and they specifically have called for cutting funding to things like NPR, the National Public Radio, PBS, the Public Broadcasting Service, and Planned Parenthood, among many other things. They also said they want to revisit and possibly cut government contracts and enact large-scale firings of federal workers. On his own social media page, Musk has been talking a lot about cutting agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which he says is redundant. Now, in case you didn't know, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is responsible for making sure that you aren't being scammed by companies. And on his social media page, Ramaswamy has said he and Musk plan to take a chainsaw to government spending. Now, let's be real here. I think most people would agree that we want an efficient government that spends less money. Everyone knows that this level of federal spending that Congress has been approving for decades is simply not sustainable. I've done several videos on that. But how this Department of Government Efficiency plans to make these spending cuts is what has a lot of people concerned. In that same op-ed, Musk and Ramaswamy say that they will advise the president to make these changes through executive action based on existing legislation rather than by passing new laws. That means they're going to do their best to keep Congress out of the loop. Now, the reality is there's already a lot that a president can do through executive order, but cutting out entire departments, that's going to need to go through Congress. Except Musk and Ramaswamy disagree. They have argued that the president should have the power to just cut spending, even if Congress has already approved it. Now, that sets up a serious challenge to the Constitution and would need to go through the courts. Now, no one has a clue how any of that would turn out, but Musk and Ramaswamy believe with the current supermajority on this Supreme Court, now would be the time to bring up the challenge because they believe they would be more likely to win that fight. Now, if they are successful, that would severely change the checks and balances system as we know it. Again, that's a whole nother video, so we're going to have to put that issue to the side as well and refocus this video on this advisory commission and what they want to cut and how it will impact you. To figure that part out, you have to understand what the United States government is actually spending our money on. As I told you, it is completely unsustainable. In fiscal year 2024, the federal government spent $6.75 trillion. In case you didn't know, that's way more money than the federal government brought in revenue. So it created a deficit. Congress has spent more money than it has brought in every single year since George W. Bush was in office. Our federal debt, which is the combination of all the annual deficits, is right now sitting at more than $36 trillion. See what I mean? Unsustainable. For the record, the last time we had a budget surplus, meaning we spent less than we brought in, was in 2001 when Bill Clinton was the president. Now, I could do a whole separate video again about U.S. government deficits and debt, but again, I want to focus on the Department of Government Efficiency. And while I tell you this next part, I want you to be thinking about that $2 trillion that Musk and Ramaswamy want to cut out. This is what $6.75 trillion in federal spending looks like for fiscal year 2024. According to the Treasury Department, this is the chart that shows you the 8 largest things our government spends money on. Now, these are round numbers, so there's also about 2% more of other stuff like agriculture and other programs that our government also spends money on. You can see the majority of our money goes to Social Security, about 21%. The second largest spending obligation is defense, which accounts for about 18% of our spending. Then you can see this large chunk, 14%, is the interest payments the federal government has to make on that $36 trillion of debt. Then you've got health at 15%, Medicare 13%, so on and so on. So where is Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy going to cut this alleged $2 trillion? Social Security? Well, first, Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid, income security, and some veterans programs are all part of what's known as mandatory government spending. Those programs are promised to folks, and those would be very difficult to mess with. Plus, Trump ran on a campaign promise that he would protect Social Security at all costs. So let's remove those things from the budget cut conversation. The next biggest expenditure would be defense. Now, think logically here. Do you really believe that the Republicans, who will control both the House and the Senate next year, would actually approve any spending cuts to defense? Not happening. In fact, the latest budget proposal from House Republicans has an increase in defense spending next year. So let's put that out as well. That leaves only a fraction of the federal spending left to cut. Sure, you could cut from the Education Department, the Transportation Department, Housing Department, or the IRS, but again, that's not going to get you to that $2 trillion mark. And if, for example, the IRS was cut from the budget, then there would be no one to collect the revenue the federal government needs to operate. Now, there's been a lot of talk about eliminating the Department of Education. Now, that again would have to go through Congress, and cutting that department also isn't going to get you to that $2 trillion in spending cuts. But maybe we can look at it another way and we can get to that $2 trillion cut. Let's not cut the programs, but instead, let's cut the federal workers who operate those programs. Musk has said there are way too many people working for the federal government. They're the ones contributing to all this bureaucracy. Therefore, they should go. Well, first, firing all those people would mean that all those seniors, the veterans, the low-income Americans who rely on those mandatory spending programs like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and veterans benefits would not be able to get help, or would take forever for them to get approved to receive the benefits that they're owed because there would be fewer federal employees working at those agencies. But even if you believe, so what? Let those people wait. We need to cut this bureaucracy. The fact is, the federal government spends about $300 billion every year on salary and benefits for federal employees, not including our military personnel. So even if you fire all those people, that only accounts for about 4% of the government spending. Musk and Ramaswamy, that $2 trillion is almost 30%. So again, that too is not going to get us to $2 trillion in spending cuts. So if you made it this far, you're an absolute rock star. I told you this was going to be a journey. Let me know you were here by leaving a money bag emoji in the comments. The bottom line here is Musk and Ramaswamy are not the first to attempt to cut what's known as waste, fraud, and abuse from the federal government. Others have tried it too. And as I said, I think we can all agree that the federal government spends too much. But cutting federal spending at the level that they're talking about now is going to be a lot more difficult for Musk and Ramaswamy than it is for them in their own private businesses. It's likely going to need a major assist from Congress and will mean a lot of backlash from the constituents of those lawmakers who agree to slash and burn it all down. Now, whether any of those politicians want that kind of smoke, we're going to have to wait and see.